My name is Calum, and I'm 22 years old. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to this channel. Now back to my story. I'm from Velmora, a small town in the heart of the country of Endaria. Life here is slow, safe, and predictable, or so it seems. I've lived in the same neighborhood my whole life. People wave at each other here. Families eat dinner together. And for the longest time, I believed mine was just like everyone else's. When my dad passed away, everything shifted. I was devastated. My mom, Lena, was equally heartbroken. It was like a part of the house went silent and never came back. But we had each other, and we had Grandma Nessa. She was our rock, the kind of woman who cooked for the neighborhood and told stories about love that lasted lifetimes. She and Grandpa Darian had been together for over 60 years. They were the golden couple, always side by side, always smiling. I looked up to them as the blueprint for lasting love and unshakable family. After my dad's death, my bond with my mom grew deeper. We clung to each other like survivors of a storm. Grandma visited often, bringing warmth and homemade bread. It felt like we were slowly rebuilding, piece by piece, and in those early days of grief, I kept telling myself, at least we still have Grandpa Dorian, but I didn't know then what I know now. That sometimes, the people you think you can count on the most can be the very ones who leave you empty. That trust, once broken, echoes louder than grief. This story is about how I learned that lesson, the hard way. For as long as I can remember, my grandparents were a symbol of what lasting love looked like. Nessa and Darian were a pair that seemed timeless, the kind of couple that still held hands at festivals, danced in the kitchen, and celebrated every anniversary with dinner under the stars. They had their routines, their jokes, their quiet glances that seemed to say, "I still choose you." But beneath that picture-perfect surface, time was doing its work. Small things began to shift. Grandpa Darian started making odd comments, asking for help with money more frequently, even though he had a military pension and a side income from renting out a shed on the family property. Grandma brushed it off as him getting forgetful. She loved him deeply, and for her, loyalty was everything. Then came the whispers. Friends of Nessa's started noticing unusual bank activity. Expensive tools, electronic gadgets, even imported luxury items began appearing in their modest Velmora home. Nessa didn't say much, but I could see the worry behind her smiles. She was paying off credit cards more often, staying up late with financial papers, and skipping her monthly bingo nights just to balance the books. When I asked her if something was wrong, she patted my hand and said, "Your grandpa's just going through something, we're fine." But they weren't. She eventually found out Darian had opened credit cards in her name and racked up over 200 million korins in debt. When she confronted him, instead of apologizing or trying to fix things, he packed a bag and left. 63 years of marriage gone in a single night. No explanation, no goodbye, just a note that said, "I need space." And that was when I stopped believing in unshakable love. 3 months ago, I got a text that stopped me cold. It was short, it read, "Hey, so I need some money." It was from Grandpa Darian. I stared at the message for a long time. He hadn't reached out since leaving Grandma. No apology, no explanation, no contact. And now, out of nowhere, he needed money. I rolled my eyes and didn't reply. I assumed he'd move on, maybe realize he had burned every bridge he had. But when I woke up the next morning, everything changed. My phone was flooded with missed calls and messages from my best friend, Keo. At first I panicked. I thought something had happened to him. Then I opened my banking app. 200,000 korins, gone. I felt sick, my stomach dropped. I couldn't even process it at first. Keo and I had been saving for our first apartment together. We shared a joint account, a sacred fund we'd both been building for over a year. And somehow, my grandfather had accessed it. I called Keo immediately, my voice shaking. He sounded confused, even cheerful. "Oh yeah, your grandpa messaged me last night. Said he wanted to surprise you with a little bonus for your apartment." I gave him the password. Did it not go through? I couldn't even speak. My grandfather, my own blood, had manipulated my friend, used our trust, and stolen from us. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. And worse, I had no idea how to confront him. Would he even care? I sat there staring at the screen, at the number that used to represent our future. My heart broke, not just from the theft, but from the realization that my grandfather had chosen himself over all of us again. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't, my mind was spinning, my hands trembling every time I picked up my phone. Keo kept apologizing, but I couldn't blame him. He was tricked just like me. The real blame fell on Darian. My grandfather, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, had just robbed me like a stranger on the street. I didn't tell Grandma yet. She was already dealing with enough, being abandoned, clawing her way out of debt, learning to live without the man she built her entire life with. I couldn't add this on her shoulders. Mom noticed I was off. "You okay?" she asked that evening, her eyes tired but full of concern. I nodded. I wasn't ready to speak the truth aloud. Saying it would make it feel too real. That night, I scrolled through old pictures on my phone. Family barbecues, Grandpa teaching me how to grill, birthdays, Christmas. Every memory felt like a lie. How could someone who once looked at me like I was his world just take? The bank said the transfer couldn't be reversed. Since the account was joint, the system recognized Keo's authorization as legitimate. Legally, nothing could be done. Emotionally, it was unbearable. I debated messaging him, drafted dozens of texts. Why did you do it? Was it worth it? Do you even feel bad? But I sent none of them. Instead, I stared at the last message he'd sent me. "Hey, so I need some money." I guess he got what he needed. I finally told Grandma. We were sitting in her kitchen, the one that still smelled faintly of cinnamon and rosemary. I watched her pour tea with those steady hands of hers, hands that had carried so much. She looked older than she did a year ago, not just in her face, but in her soul. "Grandma," I started, "I need to tell you something about Grandpa." Her hand paused mid-pour, the spout of the kettle trembling just slightly. "What is it, Calum?" I took a breath and told her everything, about the text, about the money, about Keo giving him access, and the 200,000 corons that vanished like smoke. I expected a gasp, or maybe tears. But Grandma Nessa just stared at her teacup, silent, still. A woman who had spent a lifetime holding a family together, now holding the weight of yet another blow. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes weren't shocked, they were tired. "I had a feeling," she whispered. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew he was spiraling. "I just didn't think he'd come for you too." Her words cut deeper than anything. She wasn't even surprised. That's how far things had fallen. I wanted to scream, but instead I sat there, ashamed that I didn't listen to my gut. Ashamed for dragging her through this. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling like a child again. She reached over, touched my hand. "You didn't do anything wrong." He did, and one day he'll have to live with that. We sat there for a long time, no words, just grief in its quietest form. Weeks passed, and I heard nothing from Darian. No calls, no apologies, not even a follow-up message. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air, except my savings were gone. So I knew he was very real. The silence became its own kind of cruelty. Each day I hoped, stupidly, that maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he'd return the money. Maybe he'd explain. But nothing came. I started to wonder where he was. Grandma said he had a cousin in Darnmore, a grim port city on Andaria's east coast, known for bars, ships, and people who disappeared easily. "If he's anywhere," she murmured one evening, "it's probably there." Mom didn't say much, but I could tell the news weighed on her. She moved a little slower. She stopped baking on Sundays. There was a heaviness in the house that hadn't been there since Dad died. One night, I broke down in Keo's apartment. "We worked for that money," I said, my voice cracking. "We planned a whole future." Keo nodded, ashamed but supportive. "I know, and I'm gonna earn back every cent I cost us. I swear, man." It wasn't his fault, but we were both grieving. Then the letters stopped. Grandma used to get a birthday card every year from Darian, even after he left. Nothing fancy, just a few words and his name. But this year, nothing arrived. No call, no note. Just another reminder that we didn't matter anymore. That's when something in me shifted. I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I was preparing for a confrontation. I couldn't sit in silence any longer. I needed answers, not for closure, but for dignity. So I bought a one-way train ticket to Darnmore. Darnmore was a different world. The skies always seemed gray. The streets damp with salt from the sea breeze. I wandered through rows of old shops and rusted taverns, scanning faces, wondering if I'd even recognize him anymore. Then on the third day, I found him. He was sitting outside a rundown cafe, sipping black coffee like he had no care in the world. His coat was worn, beard grayer, and eyes colder than I remembered. But it was him, my grandfather. He looked up when I approached, and for a second his face froze. Then he smirked, like he'd been expecting this moment. "Well," he said, "if it isn't the golden boy." I didn't sit down. "Where's the money?" He chuckled. "You came all this way just for that." "For the truth," I snapped. Darian leaned back. "I needed it. That's the truth. I gave 63 years to your grandmother. Raised your mom, served my country, and got nothing in return but bills and silence. So I took something back. You took from me, I said, fists clenched. From your grandson. His gaze dropped for a moment, then returned sharper. You'll survive. You're young, you've got time. I turned to walk away. You don't get to steal from people and pretend it's wisdom. Don't be so dramatic, he called after me. It's just money. But it wasn't. It was my trust, my future, and it was gone. I didn't look back. After that encounter, something inside me hardened. I had gone to Darnmore, hoping for some spark of remorse, a flicker of the man I once looked up to. But Darian wasn't that man anymore. Maybe he never was. When I got back to Velmora, I told Mom and Grandma everything. I left nothing out, the cafe, the smirk, the words he said. Grandma sat quietly for a long time. Then she nodded and whispered, "He died to me the day he left. Now, he's just a stranger in our story." It was the first time I'd seen her let go. I started focusing on work again, picking up extra shifts, helping Kyo rebuild our savings. We weren't where we used to be, but every deposit felt like a tiny piece of my control returning. Kyo and I even started apartment hunting again, not just out of necessity, but out of defiance. We weren't going to let Darian's betrayal define our future. Mom was quiet about it all, but I noticed she began spending more time with Grandma. They cooked together, laughed more. We were healing, not quickly but steadily. One afternoon, a letter came. Not from Darian, from the bank. It was a statement from a new account. My name was on it. Inside was a note. He transferred the funds from your joint account here. You're the only authorized user. It wasn't the full 200K, but it was close. I stared at the paper, stunned. I didn't know what had changed. Had guilt finally crept into his heart? Or was it just another game? I didn't respond, but I accepted the money. Because forgiveness may take years, but reclaiming what's yours, that starts now. The money helped, but it didn't erase the damage. Some scars aren't visible in a bank statement. I kept the deposit quiet, only Kyo knew. I didn't want Grandma or Mom thinking he'd done something noble. He hadn't. He'd just undone a wrong he had no right to commit in the first place. But something shifted in me. Not peace, not yet, but power. I stopped checking my messages, expecting him to reach out. I stopped replaying the conversation in Darnmore. I started sleeping again. One evening, I sat with Grandma in the garden. We pulled weeds and planted new marigolds. Her favorite, the wind was soft. And for the first time in months, she looked calm. You know, she said, brushing dirt from her hands. I don't miss him anymore. I used to miss the idea of him, the man I thought he was. But now, I'm just thankful I'm free. I nodded, me too. We didn't talk about him much after that. He became a name we passed over in family stories. A ghost who no longer haunted us, just drifted somewhere out of frame. Kyo and I eventually signed the lease on a small 2-bedroom apartment near the city's edge. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Every box we unpacked felt like a new chapter, a quiet declaration that we'd made it despite everything. One night, I sat alone on the balcony, watching the stars and thinking about legacy. Not what people leave behind in their wills, but what they carve into your memory. Darian left betrayal, but I would leave resilience. It's been a year since that text from Darian changed everything. I haven't heard from him since the bank transfer. No calls, no letters, no apologies. And honestly, I don't expect any. That chapter is closed. Life has slowly taken on a new rhythm. Kyo and I are settled into our apartment. It's not perfect. We've still got secondhand furniture and mismatched mugs, but it feels like home. We built this space ourselves. Brick by emotional brick. Every light bulb we replace. Every meal we cook. It reminds me we're in control now. Mom has been smiling more. She even joined a painting class at the community center. I see color returning to her world. Grandma Nessa, she's thriving. She volunteers at the library, teaches cooking workshops, and recently hosted a neighborhood potluck. The woman who once looked like grief itself is now full of life and laughter. Her strength inspires me more than she'll ever know. As for me, I've started writing. Not just journaling, but sharing pieces of my story anonymously online. I figured if someone else is going through betrayal, confusion, or heartbreak, maybe my words can help them find the strength to stand again. I'm no longer angry. I'm grateful. Grateful that I saw the truth, even though it hurt. Grateful for the people who stood by me. Grateful that I didn't let one man's actions dictate the rest of my life. Darian will always be part of my story, but not the whole story. The rest, I'm writing it myself. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.